Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring a truly fascinating piece of literature by the author Kalki. It's called The Tiger King, and honestly, this story is an absolute masterpiece. It's a hilarious yet profoundly deep satire that totally exposes the arrogance of people who hold absolute power. Whether you're reading this for the very first time or you're gearing up for your upcoming board exams, you are in the exact right place. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. You can really just think of this as your clear study syllabus for the board exams. We're going to cover the prophecy and upbringing, the vow and the hunt, bribing the British officer, the 100th Tiger comedy, the ironic wooden death, and finally, core themes and PYQs. Starting with Section 1, the prophecy and upbringing, an English royal childhood. Let's start right at the very beginning with the birth of Jalani Jungjung Bahadur, the Maharaja of Pratibandhapuram. Right off the bat, you immediately see the absolute absurdity that sets the stage for this entire story. I mean, picture this. At just 10 days old, this miracle baby suddenly speaks. And he doesn't just babble, right? He looks at the kingdom's wise astrologers, tells them that all who are born must one day die, and then demands to know the exact manner of his death. It's wild. Fast forward, at 20 years old, he's officially crowned king, and within just 10 years, he has completely neglected his state duties to go out and kill 70 tigers. Now, what's really interesting about this prediction is how the astrologer reacts. This is a highly memorable moment that frequently pops up in previous year questions or PYQs. When that 10-day-old baby asked about his death, the chief astrologer revealed that because the prince was born in the hour of the bull, and the bull and the tiger are enemies, his death would come from a tiger. Specifically, the 100th tiger. And the astrologer was so incredibly confident in this prophecy that he staked his entire career on it. He swore he'd cut off his traditional tuft of hair and become an insurance agent if he was proven wrong. Let's take a quick PYQ pause right here, because this question is an absolute exam favorite. How does the author satirize the upbringing of the crown prince? Well, Kalki explicitly points out that the Indian prince drank the milk of an English cow, was brought up by an English nanny, was tutored in English by an Englishman, and saw literally nothing but English films. This is just a brilliant satire on the Indian royalty of the time. Kalki is completely mocking their blind obsession with British culture and how they desperately tried to imitate their colonial rulers. Moving into Section 2, the vow and the hunt, the quest for 100 tigers. So, this is where the king enters adulthood, and his entire governance takes a massive backseat to a single manic obsession. 100. That is the goal. The king takes a solemn vow that he's going to attend to all other matters of the state only after killing 100 tigers to defeat that prophecy. This massive number really drives home the theme of his extravagance. To make sure he gets every last one of them, he passes a strict law banning literally everyone else in the kingdom from hunting tigers. In fact, he declares that if anyone even dares to fling a stone at a tiger, all their wealth and property will be confiscated. No joke. And this brings us to another classic PYQ. Why did the Maharaja decide to get married? Was it for love? Absolutely not. After successfully killing 70 tigers over 10 years, the tiger population in his own kingdom went entirely extinct. So what does he do? He calls his Diwan and orders him to find a princess to marry, purely based on one incredibly selfish criteria. Her kingdom had to have a massive tiger population so he could finish hunting his remaining 30 tigers. Section 3. Bribing the British officer, saving the throne. Let's move along and see how this builds, because this introduces a major conflict in the narrative. This one frequently appears in board exam long-form answers regarding the king's political desperation. The high-ranking British officer visits the kingdom and wants to hunt the tiger, or, at least be photographed with a dead one. But the king, desperately protecting his own 100 tiger quota, outright refuses. Realizing he just angered a very powerful British official and could lose his entire kingdom, the Maharaja goes into a total panic. So, to save his throne, he orders 50 expensive diamond rings from a famous British jeweler in Calcutta and sends them to the officer's wife, hoping she'll just pick one or two. Nope. Instead, she greedily keeps all 50 and simply sends back a little thank you note. And the cost of those rings? A staggering 3 lakh rupees. I mean, just think about that for a second. The king is willing to empty his state's treasury to the tune of 3 lakh rupees, which was an absolute fortune at the time, just to maintain his throne and continue his selfish, obsessive hunt. It perfectly captures how absolute power leads to completely reckless actions. Which brings us to Section 4, the 100th Tiger comedy, a missed mark. We've reached the climax of the hunt. But in true Kalki fashion, this isn't some brave, epic battle. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a completely satirical and ironic comedy of errors. The king finally spots what he believes is the 100th tiger. He takes careful aim, fires, the tiger drops, and the king triumphantly drives off in his car, boasting that he has finally defeated fate. But here is the reality. The king completely missed. The bullet just whizzed right past, and the old tiger simply fainted from the incredibly loud sound of the gun. The king's hubris entirely blinded him to his own failure. When his hunters walked up and realized the tiger was still breathing, they were absolutely terrified the king would fire them if they told him the truth. So instead of speaking up, one of the hunters just shot the tiger himself from about a foot away. Time for another PYQ pause. You might be wondering, where did this 100th tiger even come from in the first place? Well, when the Maharaja was stuck at 99 tigers, his anxiety reached a total fever pitch. He threatened his Diwan with dire consequences if a tiger wasn't found immediately. So, to save his own job, the terrified Diwan actually brought a very old, super weak tiger all the way from a park in Madras, hid it in his house, and secretly planted it in the forest at night just to appease the king's obsession. It just goes to show the absolute cowardice of the king's subordinates who were operating purely out of fear. Section 5. The ironic wooden death, the prophecy fulfilled. So, the king thinks he's safe, but fate always finds a way. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate irony of the story, which, by the way, is arguably the most important PYQ you'll face. The astrologer predicted the 100th tiger would kill him. The king spent his entire life fighting fearsome live tigers, totally neglecting his people to do so. But what was the actual threat? What actually brought him down? A cheap, poorly carved wooden toy tiger meant for a toddler. Thinking he has finally beaten death, the king turns his attention back to his family, specifically his son's 3rd birthday. He buys him this wooden toy tiger. But because it was carved by an unskilled carpenter, the surface is rough, covered in these tiny wooden slivers. While he's playing with his son, one of these slivers pierces the king's right hand. He just pulls it out and ignores it. Big mistake. The very next day, a massive infection spreads through his entire arm. 3 famous surgeons are brought in all the way from Madras. They operate, step out of the room, and announce with this incredible dark humor, the operation was successful. The Maharaja is dead. The 100th tiger took its final revenge. Finally, Section 6, Core Themes and PYQs, nailing the board exam. Let's synthesize all this analytical data directly into exactly what you need to nail your exams. If you get a question asking for a character sketch of the Tiger King, listen up. These are the high-value exam vocabulary words you absolutely must include. He is arrogant. He is highly superstitious. Above all, he is grossly irresponsible and selfish. He completely neglects his governance, his people, and the environmental balance, prioritizing his own personal glory and safety way above the needs of his kingdom. So the crucial point here is understanding that this entire story is a satire. Kalki uses humor and extreme exaggeration, like a 10-day-old speaking baby or a 3 lakh rupee bribe, to expose and criticize the stupidity and vices of the ruling class. The story just mercilessly mocks the hubris, or that extreme pride, of those in absolute political power who actually think they can control everything, even death itself. Wrapping up the major themes, we see very clear themes of animal cruelty, the absolute inevitability of fate, and of course, the satire of absolute power. But if you want a golden line to include in your board exams, memorize this right now. Misuse of power corrupts the possessor. We see this not just in the king, but in how his terrified ministers cover up the truth just to protect their jobs, which lets a corrupt system continue unchecked. I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thoughts. The king spent his entire life running from his fates. But if the future is inevitable, did the king's obsessive and cruel attempts to change his fate actually pave the exact path to his own ridiculous demise? Think about it. If he hadn't been so insanely obsessed with tigers, would he have ever bought that fatal wooden toy for his son? It's an incredible irony that really leaves us pondering the severe consequences of reckless power. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Study these points, master those PYQs, and I will see you next time.